I think we all know the truth is that if you want to become more flexible, you have to start stretching. Now let's find yourself on the opposite scale here. Raise your hand if you are not a flexible person at all. Like you would have been out at the beginning of that game, because I would. Like you saw me, I couldn't even get past the first cut, right? Some of us are not flexible that way. Others of you, you can put your lips on the floor without anything else helping you. It's impressive, okay? I don't know if you know this, but stretching can help with headaches, stress, slouching, and believe it or not, stretching can help with, how do I say it, breaking wind, okay? Farting is another way to say it, okay? Maybe that's why girls are more flexible than guys, because if you find yourself in a dorm room with a guy, you'll know that they've got some gas. But enough about your body. I want you to flip and think about it in this way. Let's talk about your faith. If you want your faith to become strong and flexible, then you have to stretch it. That's what this whole series is about. We're going to look at this month how to stretch your faith, how to get the most out of your faith so it can be strong. Sometimes it can be fun, sometimes it can be hard, but we all know that at the end it's going to be worth it because our faith is going to be stronger. But here's the deal. Stretching only works if you commit to it, right? We know this, right? Have you ever seen someone like on a sideline before a game or something like that and they're like halfway stretching, right? Does that really do a whole lot if you're just like, stretching like this? No, you got to really commit to stretching to get the most out of it. And I think the same is true with your faith. The problem is some of us don't ever really fully commit to trying to stretch your faith, to trying to grow your faith. We halfway do it. We do some of the things that we're supposed to. We know what it's supposed to look like, but we don't really fully commit to it. And that's what I want to move us past. If I'm honest, and I think that most of us can identify with this, if I'm honest, I know that there are definitely times in my life where my faith feels stagnant, where I don't feel close to God, or I don't feel His presence completely. And I bet you've probably felt that way as well at different times in your life. Maybe you're there right now where you just kind of feel like, man, I'm here and I know that I believe, but I just don't feel close to God. This whole series is meant to move you past that, meant to move you in a way where you can feel God a little bit more because you're stretching your faith. But let me ask you this question as we get this ball rolling. Do you follow through with your commitments? What do you think about that? Just for you personally, do you feel like you follow through with your commitments? I bet we all know people who don't follow through with their commitments, right? We probably all know people who say they're going to do something and then they don't do it. Maybe you got a sibling like that, or maybe you got a parent like that. Maybe you have a teacher like that. I'm not sure. But we know what that looks like. Maybe some of us are like that. Most of the time, teenagers don't make New Year's resolutions. I don't think that's a thing that y'all do very much. But maybe you have. Maybe you've already broken them, or maybe you've already messed that up. But here's how I know that this is true for all of us, because I know what this looks like, because we see it every year with Move, right? We get really close to God. We get really close in our faith, and we get excited, and then the weeks go by, and the months go by, and all of a sudden we don't feel as close, or we haven't followed through with the commitments that we said we were going to do. We said we were going to start reading our Bible every day. We said we're going to find some accountability. We said we're going to do this, and yet we just find ourselves going, yeah, that just seems to be the thing that I say every year in the summer. That's one of the reasons that we're doing this event, Move Continued, is to reignite our faith and our passion around some of the things that we said we were going to do. Instead of it being every year, but maybe in the middle, right, in the winter, we say, hey, we talked about this. We said we were going to do this. We had one of those cards that we said we were going to do. Maybe we just need a little kick in the butt to move in that direction. And so, man, I really want to encourage you guys to sign up for that, because I think it's going to be a great event that can move your faith forward in the in-between. But for this, we're going to talk about some things from the scripture that I think is really important tonight. I've got 2 simple ideas for you. And the second one is really practical, but the first one is really important to help you understand the second one. We're going to be in the book of Romans this whole month as we talk about this. And I need to set the stage for the book of Romans so you can understand some things that we're going to talk about. As we read the book of Romans, we know that this was a book that Paul wrote to the house churches in Rome. In Rome, I know that sometimes when we talk about letters to the churches or something like that, we have our mind and think, well, what would it look like for Paul to write a letter to our church? The churches in Rome were a bunch of house churches. This wasn't like a building that people would go to on Sunday and everybody would worship. This was something that was happening in people's homes. And so you had a bunch of different house churches all throughout the city of Rome that created the body of Christ, okay? But what happened in the first century during this time is that the emperor, who was the emperor of Rome, Nero, because of some things that happened, he decided he was going to kick out all of the Jews that were in Rome, okay? He wanted to blame some things on them, so he literally banished them from the city of Rome. He said, everybody has to leave. If you're a Jew, you have to leave, okay? So all these leaders in the church, okay, all these leaders in the house churches, they left. They had to go. And so do you know who stayed behind? Gentiles, Gentile Christian leaders. So they rose up in the church, they began leading, and naturally, because of some things that they were figuring out in the first century, the Jews and the Gentiles had some disagreements about how they interpreted their faith in the scripture, right? They had some disagreements about circumcision and dietary laws and all these different types of things. And they eventually figured it out. But what happened was that the Jews who got banished eventually were allowed to come back into Rome. And so they had this issue of church leadership where you had some people who rose to leadership, and then you had some people who wanted their leadership back, but they operated differently and believed some different things. And so this is where Paul writes into. He has to unify the church. He has to unify these people. He has to bring them together under some common things, and he has to point them forward in their faith. And so this is where we're going to pick up as we read the book of Romans. And so Paul writes to them. We're going to look at Romans chapter 5, verses 6 through 8. It's on the screen. He says this, "When we were utterly helpless, Christ came at just the right time, and he died for us sinners. Now, most people would not be willing to die for an upright person, though someone might perhaps be willing to die for a person who is especially good. But God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners." This is an important verse, and I want you to notice something from the very beginning. I want you to notice all the we and the us language that is in these verses. When we were helpless, Christ died for us, his great love for us. All these things that Paul says are about the unity that they find in what God has done for them. And this is an important thing to understand because there was a lot of things dividing them. It put them on the same playing field. And so all of these words really communicate this idea, and this is what we have to understand first, is that Christ committed himself to you. When Jesus came to this world, believe it or not, he had you in mind. He had you and me. He had all of humanity on his heart, on his mind. That was the purpose to which he came. And when he came and he lived his perfect life and he died on the cross and he rose from the grave, he did all of that for us. And he made a commitment to us. In fact, one of the verses, the last sentence that we read there is one of my favorite verses, Romans chapter 5, verse 8. I'll throw it back up on the screen. He says, "While we were still sinners, Christ died for us." This is such an important verse for us to understand because what it communicates to us is that God didn't wait for us to have it together. He didn't wait for you to figure out all the mistakes in your life. He didn't wait for the people who were there. He didn't wait for Israel to figure things out while we were still sinners. If we just put ourselves in those people's shoes, while we still weren't figuring it out, God came and he died for us. And that is important because what it communicates to us is that Christ committed himself to you for your salvation before you could have anything together. And this is a simple point, and I don't expect this to change the way you live necessarily, but we have to understand this truth that Christ has committed himself to you before we move on to what is next. And so here's what he says with all of this in mind, Romans chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. Paul writes and says, "Well then, should we keep on sinning so that God can show us more and more of his wonderful grace? Of course not. Since we have died to sin, how can we continue to live in it? Or have you not forgotten that when you were joined with Christ Jesus in baptism, we joined him in his death? For we died and were buried with Christ by baptism, and just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glorious power of the Father, now we may also have new lives." And so this is the challenge for all of us. Because we understand that Christ has committed himself for us, that the goal for us is to commit yourself to Christ. Paul uses these words. He says, joined with him in baptism, joined with him in his death, in his burial, ultimately joining him in his resurrection. This is a commitment. And if you want to stretch your faith to be where it's supposed to be, you need to fully commit to Jesus. But here's where we are. I think for many of us, is that many of us, we're not fully committed. We want to be. We like the idea, but we don't do what is necessary to fully commit ourselves to Jesus. Let me give you an example of what this looks like. My son, Dawson, who is 4, going to be 5 in a month, we've tried to teach him how to ride a bike. And Willow, my daughter, she picked up riding a bike very easily. It took us like 2 days, and she was on it and going. Dawson has not been like that. And so Dawson, we've put him on a bike, and he refused to pedal, okay? It was too hard for him. He's like, this is too hard. And so he wanted to give up. And we tried over and over and over again. And so ultimately what we had to do is we had to, I'm going to show you a picture of what we had to do. We had to put his bike on 2x4s, okay? And so this is what it looked like, okay? So we're in the garage, and we put his bike on 2x4s, and so this released all the tension, okay? And so as he pedaled, it was just a free pedal. There was no tension like the road in the tire, okay? And so we would just sit there with his helmet on, obviously, and he would just pedal over and over, so he'd learn the motion and all that kind of stuff, and to make this commitment to learning how to ride a bike. And so ultimately, this helped him a little bit, but he still had to make the commitment to go out there. So the next picture, what I have is what he looks like now. Okay, that was a couple months ago. And so he's on training wheels still. He hasn't figured out the balance yet. I think that's going to take him a little while. But he has to make this commitment. At first, it was too hard. It was too difficult, and so he didn't want to commit to this. He didn't even want to try it. He wanted to give up. But after we kind of showed him, this is what it works. I know this is a silly example, but he would just pedal and pedal and pedal, and he didn't like it because he didn't go anywhere. But we had to teach his legs what to do, and now he can ride on training wheels and he can go and all that kind of stuff. And once he figures out his balance, he'll get there and he'll be riding a bike and it'll be great. And we could take bike rides as a family. But here's what we have to understand from this example and for your faith. It doesn't happen overnight, right? I don't know if you can remember about when you learn how to ride a bike, but it doesn't happen overnight for anybody. Nobody gets on a bike and the first time they just figure it out. I could be wrong. There could be somebody that has done that. But for the most part, this doesn't happen overnight. It takes commitment. It takes practice. It takes a little bit of diligence to say, okay, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to work at this. And this is true in our faith as well. The problem is that so many of us want it to happen overnight. We want, if we say, man, I want to be this spiritual juggernaut, or I want to have this figured out, we want it to just happen. We want us to just love our Bible and love reading and do it every day. We want to be a certain type of people, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice. It takes diligence. It takes commitment. It's okay to recognize that you are not there. It's okay to recognize that you're not where you want to be. But all of us have to choose to stretch our faith by committing just a little bit more to working in that direction. So what I have for you tonight is some practical things, because all of you are probably at different stages. But I think the truth is that all of us could make a commitment to moving our faith a little bit further, by stretching our faith a little bit further. And so I have 4 ideas for you tonight, but I don't need you to remember all 4. I just need you to remember 1. But you get to pick the 1, okay? So they're going to be on the screen, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit, but what I want you to do is in this process is to figure out where you're at. What is it for you that you could say, that's what I need to commit to moving my faith a little bit further? Here's the first one. You need to commit to showing up. Some of you just need to commit to showing up to church a little bit more, or to small group a little bit more. It's not that church is what makes you a Christian or what makes you have this figured out, but it helps you in the process. In fact, I don't know if you know this, but everything that we do is designed with you in mind. That will not be true for the rest of your life, okay? You will develop into a young adult, an adult where things might not always be geared towards you, and you have to figure out your faith on your own. Right now in this stage, as a high schooler, as a teenager, everything that we do from this stage, from this place, for your small group, is all geared with you in mind. Maybe what you need to do in this moment is just commit for 2022 is to show up. Like, I need to be more consistent. I don't know if you know this, but your small group leaders, they keep track of when you come or when you don't come, okay? And so they got like a little spreadsheet, and they know, like, they could see your attendance patterns. In fact, this past couple weeks, I've been doing our attendance sheets, and I can kind of see that too. I can kind of see the people who are here pretty much every week. I can kind of see the people who are here like twice a month, and I can kind of see the people that came in the summer and we haven't seen since then. And so maybe for you, maybe not for everybody, because some of you are doing this, but maybe for you, what you need to do, the first thing is just start showing up. And that could be the first step that you take in committing to Jesus a little bit more. Maybe what you need to do is to commit to love God. That sounds very broad, but here's what I mean by that. Maybe you just need to deepen your relationship with God by reading or praying or one of those things that we know leads you a little bit closer to God. Maybe for you, you're here pretty consistently, but what you haven't done is made the commitment to actually develop your faith on your own. And that you need to commit to getting into the scripture. You need to commit to praying. You need to commit to doing something to deepen your relationship and your love for God. Maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe you're a step further. Maybe what you need to commit to is commit to loving others. Maybe you have that. Maybe you show up. Maybe you're working on your faith. You feel like you're pretty good there. But maybe what you need to do is to take your faith, stretch it by saying, what can I do for others? How can I lead other people closer to God? Maybe it's developing a relationship with someone to try to lead them to Christ. Maybe it's just encouraging someone to come to church with you. Maybe to stretch your faith, what you need to do is commit to helping other people come closer to Jesus with you. But maybe those three things aren't where you're at all. And you're like, man, that just seems so far away from where I need to be. Yet, here's the last one, is maybe you need to commit to just asking questions. Here's why I say this. Whatever you need answered in your life, your belief, your faith, you need to start asking those questions. Ask your small group leader, ask me, ask a friend, ask your parents. Because if you don't begin to ask the questions that are going to move your faith forward, and what I mean by that is like, man, if you've got doubts, if you've got things that you're unsure about, if you're like, man, I don't know if I truly believe in all of this, ask the questions that you need to ask to find the answers that you need to find. I have a quote that's written in my office that I see every day that I'm in there that says this: 3 out of every 5 young Christians disengage from their faith after the age of 15. And that's a scary quote for me. And the reason I have it written on there is because I don't want that to be true of the people that come through this place. And the reason that this quote is true or close to true is because a lot of times teenagers' faith is not their own. It's not something that they really committed to. It's maybe something that their parents told them that is theirs. Or they make you come to church. And you've never made that commitment. You've never committed to this belief system or this faith or God in your own personal way. I see this as I watch students graduate high school and go into college, and I don't know what the number is, but I see it all the time. They just completely remove themselves from what they knew or what they said they believed. Why? Because they never really committed to it in the first place. So I say, ask questions to find the answers that you need the answers to. Maybe that's what you need to commit to. The bottom line is that you can stretch your faith with a commitment. Without committing to it, you leave it by chance, and that's what I don't want any of us to do. So here's what I want you to think about as I close. Do you care enough to commit to this? Do you care about your faith enough? Do you care about your relationship with God enough to commit to something, to say, I'm going to do something to move my faith forward? If you don't, then you don't. But if you do care enough about your faith and about your relationship with God, then maybe it's a time to say, let me commit to something to move my faith forward. If you leave it by chance, the odds are it's not going to happen. You're going to drift. You're going to fall away from God. Eventually, somewhere along the line, you're just going to disengage from your faith completely. To safeguard yourself from that, tonight, commit yourself to one of these things. You'll talk about it in your small group. I promise you, you won't regret the work that it takes when you get there.